Les psychiatres revendiquent le fait que le dépistage des troubles mentaux serait bénéfique pour tout le monde. Mais est-ce vrai? Et quels en sont les risques? En 2003, une commission présidentielle, la nouvelle commission sur la liberté et la santé mentale, a établi un programme exhaustif dans le cadre duquel de larges tranches de la société américaine feraient l'objet de tests de dépistage de troubles mentaux. Parmi les buts énoncés, on trouvait des programmes qui donneraient lieu à des tests de dépistage effectués sur les très jeunes, à faire jouer aux écoles un rôle plus large dans le diagnostic et le traitement des troubles mentaux, et à répandre l'utilisation du dépistage de troubles chez les médecins généralistes.
It's going to screen the population for mental health. The whole population. They're going to do it by stages, starting with school children, of course.
Jusqu'à présent, le dépistage obligatoire de troubles mentaux n'est pas encore un fait, à part pour certains segments de la société. L'un d'eux est constitué des personnes les plus impuissantes et qui sont presque démunies de droits, les enfants en foyer d'accueil.
A child goes into foster care, they label the child with some kind of a psychological problem. The child is immediately sent to therapy. Well, the therapist will say, well, I believe the child needs to be on something. So they recommend that the child see a psychiatrist to have the drug administered.
Out of the 60, 65 families that I see, easily 90% of the kids they have the mental health diagnosis to begin with. If they get it from a psychiatrist, it almost always comes with meds. And I think that we see identified as at-risk kids in the community, and we see some of the most intense situations. And a lot of them are on 4 or 5 different meds.
I've seen children that when the day they're taken out of their parents' custody and placed into state custody, actually seem happy, healthy, vibrant, energetic. And then, 2 months later, after they've begun taking these medications, they are very slow. They are zombie-like, is the best way to describe it.
De nos jours, tous les enfants qui entrent sous la garde de l'État du Texas font l'objet de tests de dépistage de troubles mentaux. Résultat, 60% des enfants en foyer se sont vus diagnostiquer et prennent au moins un psychotrope. Certains de ces enfants n'ont que 3 ans. C'est encore pire dans d'autres États. Dans le Massachusetts, par exemple, les 2 tiers des enfants sous la garde de l'État sont traités pour soigner leurs troubles mentaux. Au niveau national, un enfant en foyer prend 3 fois plus de psychotropes que tout autre enfant. Tel était le cas de Gabriel Myers, un enfant en foyer de 7 ans qui prenait 2 psychotropes puissants. La FDA avait même fait inscrire une étiquette de mise en garde sur l'un d'eux, car il provoquait chez les enfants des envies de suicide. Gabriel s'est pendu avec le tuyau de la douche. Les soldats au service actif représentent un autre secteur du marché. Ils sont fréquemment examinés dans les cliniques militaires. On les dit affectés d'un trouble mental et on leur fait prendre de puissants psychotropes qui leur donnent soif de violence.
Iraq wasn't like Vietnam. There weren't illegal drugs everywhere. But there were drugs everywhere because, every guy on post, they knew all they needed to do was go down and see the combat stress unit, the shrink, and he was the drug dealer on post for us.
Almost everybody that saw the body or experienced the event were put on some sort of psychotropic medication.
Some bases where my friends were at, my fellow veterans were at, everyone, the whole platoon was on drugs.
I would say about 75% of active duty military is addicted to some type of psychotropic drug.
You could walk around a military barracks and you ask someone for some Prozac and somebody's got some Prozac or some Xanax or some Zoloft.
I've got friends who were in the Army with me who are now dependent on Zoloft and psychotropic drugs just because they got used to it in Iraq and they didn't ever want to get off it, and now they're dependent on it and addicted to it.
We have huge numbers of military people on antidepressants, and instead of the suicide rate going down, which you'd expect if the drugs were effective, the suicide rate is going up.
This last January, we had more soldiers commit suicide than we had die in combat. And what's not being brought out much yet is the fact that the large majority of these soldiers were on these drugs. We're drugging the military at a rate we've never, ever seen before.
Et ce n'est qu'un début. Il est prévu que 43 cliniques dans 15 bases des États-Unis, d'Allemagne et d'Italie accueillent des programmes de dépistage de troubles mentaux. Une enquête effectuée a révélé que 12% des soldats en Irak et 17% des soldats en Afghanistan prennent des antidépresseurs ou des somnifères, soit 20 000 membres des forces militaires. Mais c'est un chiffre bien maigre comparé à celui des femmes enceintes ou qui viennent d'accoucher, qui pourraient être droguées si le dépistage psychiatrique en venait à être une obligation légale.
When a woman is pregnant, right during the pregnancy, specifically right afterwards, her hormones are changing and sometimes raging. And to screen them and call it mental illness, if they have any type of emotional issues in any way, shape, or form, is utterly ludicrous.
Même sans loi qui rende le dépistage obligatoire, les femmes enceintes peuvent faire l'objet de tests de dépistage à leur insu. Voici des femmes qui ont été interviewées après être sorties de chez leur docteur.
Ever been screened for mental illness?
I have not been screened for mental illness. No, I've never been screened for any mental illness.
I don't remember any pre-screening.
I have not been.
No. No?
Have you ever been screened for any mental illness?
No, I have not been screened for any mental illness.
Did your OB/GYN or gynecologist have you fill out a questionnaire that contains psychological questions?
Yes, my OB/GYN did give me a questionnaire that has psychological questions.
I've never been screened for mental illness. Yes, I would say the first time I went to see my OB/GYN, I did fill out questionnaires about even family medical history, my mental state.
I've not been screened for any mental illness or depression. I took a questionnaire at my 6-week checkup, and it basically asked me about if I was crying, if I felt depressed.
Yeah, it was a questionnaire about depression. If you're depressed, or if you had any history of depression.
Are you happy with your normal day? Are you happy about being pregnant?
Or have you ever hurt yourself? Or are you happy? If I feel like hurting someone, if I was angry.
Do mental illness run in your family?
You know, it was very noticeable to me after the pregnancy that they're actually fishing for the postpartum depression.
When I was pregnant with my daughter, before I had her, I had to take postpartum depression medicine from my 7th month on to my 9th month.
À quoi ce dépistage nous mène-t-il? À des programmes peu connus qui visent à droguer la population. Un programme du genre de celui établi au Texas en 1995. Le projet algorithmique de médication du Texas, ou TMAP.
TMAP is a program that was originated starting in the 90s, a collaborative group of doctors from University of Texas and the Texas Department of Mental Health and Mental Retardation. And what it was supposed to do was come up with the best practice for treating mental illness.
Utilisant les fonds alloués à la recherche de 11 compagnies pharmaceutiques, ce conseil, constitué en majorité de psychiatres, établit un schéma étape par étape qui exigeait que seulement les derniers et les plus onéreux des psychotropes soient prescrits aux patients qui souffraient de problèmes mentaux. Si un psychotrope ne marchait pas, les médecins étaient obligés d'en essayer un autre tout aussi cher. Si aucun ne marchait, alors on passait au traitement par électrochoc. Mais ceux qui dirigeaient le programme TMAP étaient secrètement impliqués dans un important conflit d'intérêts.
They didn't disclose that the researchers that were all involved in creating this, almost every single one of them had financial relationships with the pharmaceutical companies.
Mais le Texas n'est pas le seul État où la corruption sévit. Alan Jones était un investigateur du bureau de l'inspecteur général de l'État de Pennsylvanie.
I learned that these monies were all coming in to the state to support and to promote a program called TMAP, the Texas Medication Algorithm Project. And so my concern was piqued very quickly that there was at least one state official who might be inappropriately receiving and dispersing monies from drug companies. They called it PenMap, but it was based entirely on the TMAP model. Also very quickly, I learned that there were other state employees who were serving on advisory boards financed through various pharmaceutical companies, and other state employees who were accepting honorariums personally, directly, from drug companies for speaking in their state capacities or official capacities. That's a felony in Pennsylvania. I saw there was a much bigger picture and attempted to surface that bigger picture and was consistently told to back off. I was told that drug companies write checks to politicians on both sides of the aisle. Back off. you will not expand this investigation into the drug companies. Continue to press the investigation, much of it on my own time at this point. I became increasingly alarmed that all of the drugs recommended by the TMAP program were exclusively the new patented atypical antipsychotics for schizophrenia and all of the brand new patented SSRI antidepressants. None of it added up. When it became obvious to me that my investigation was not going to be permitted to continue, and it became obvious to the Inspector General's office that I was not going to stop, I was removed from lead investigator on the case. They threatened me with loss of career, with loss of job, with loss of reputation, essentially.
Bien que l'investigation ait abouti par la condamnation du pharmacien en chef de l'État de Pennsylvanie, le programme TMAP et d'autres comme le PENMAP se multiplient, rapportant des milliards de dollars aux compagnies pharmaceutiques. Mais le filon qu'a trouvé la psychiatrie coûte cher au grand public. En 2001, le TMAP et son équivalent chez les enfants, le CMAP, ont mis en faillite le programme d'assistance médicale, Medicaid, le système carcéral et le système de santé mentale du Texas. À quoi ressemble donc le tableau final? Voilà un programme de dépistage exécuté aux frais du contribuable, dirigé par le gouvernement et dans le cadre duquel toute personne qui, d'après un psychiatre, est affectée d'un trouble mental se voit donner des psychotropes dangereux, puissants et onéreux. Et si ces derniers sont inefficaces, un traitement électrochoc.
They're going to start with school children on the New Freedom Initiative. Then they're going to move it to senior citizen nursing homes. Then they're going to move it to, of course, military. And then parents.
By the time you're 18, you've been screened in utero when you were an infant. You were screened as an infant when you first came out. You were screened in your daycare. You were screened then at school. You were screened at the pediatrician's office. You're screened in high school. You're screened over and over again.
And to sit there and pass laws requiring that people be screened and drugged based on screening under state law or federal law is really, it's criminal. It should not be done.
They're marketing this madness all over this country, and we are actually becoming an example for the rest of the world. So we're, again, the poster child, if you will, and so the rest of the world is spending more and more on drugs.
I don't know that there was ever a time in the history of the world where people have been drugged to the extent of what we're seeing today.
The reality is, if you look at the overall picture, I don't see these drugs helping us make a better society. We see it in the military, we see it in our children, we see it in the schools. These drugs are not working to make a better society.
Avec toutes ces campagnes de marketing cachées sur les troubles mentaux, qu'arrive-t-il au patient une fois qu'il a été diagnostiqué et qu'il est entré dans l'engrenage de cette machine à psychotropes?